Okay. Good evening and welcome to another conversation with Safe Space. My name is Sharice. I am your host, and our guest today is Kata. I would like to remind you that Safe Space is a conversational panel that is intended to be free of judgment, free of harassment, and free of emotional harm. We ask that you keep an open mind, be receptive to different perspectives, and be okay with being a little uncomfortable. So I'm going to allow my college buddy to introduce herself. Go ahead, Kata.
Hi, my name is Katerina Brassovan. My nickname is Kata, as people at USC and Loyola know me. I went to the Masters of Education program with our host, and I'm an immigrant. I came to the country in 1988 from a country I tell my students that doesn't exist anymore, Yugoslavia, that consequently had a war, and now I'm from Serbia. So I work at one of the city colleges of Chicago at adult education, and I am teaching ESL and language arts for high school equivalency currently, along with occasional computer class and some curriculum design for city colleges, which has been really exciting during the corona outbreak. So that's my history.
Well, thank you, Kata, for being a guest on Safe Space. Um, Tonight's conversation is going to be interesting. We're discussing the lens of immigrants and how they identify with the American experience, basically, how they also identify the experience of Black lives and understanding the movement of Black Lives Matter. And Kata is going to share with us her experience as an educator and how her students have perceived Black Lives Matter, the experience of Black life here in America, through their lens of coming from somewhere that is considered third world with very few opportunities. Kapta, go ahead and share what you have experienced as an educator and what you think are some of the issues, the underlying issues that your students experience here in America.
So I kind of want to go back to that beginning of really the problem, which is as my undergrad in history from Loyola, that prism always comes through, right? And at some point during all my lectures about the grammar and the sentence structure, and make sure the pronunciation's there because I teach advanced level ESL. So I really get a lot of students that have even master's degrees. I get a lot of different students or people who work from level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and work the whole plethora of classes to get to level 5 advanced, right? Which is kind of almost the last level. And I realized that during that whole process, there is, first of all, no class that we teach as welcome to the country, new immigrants. This is what the country is about. So there is really no welcome to America class, right? Then the mix of these immigrants that we get, including myself, some of us came here legally. I came through my uncle who got here in 1950. And none of the people that came from Italy where they didn't have anything to eat, the Greeks, the Southern Europeans, the Northern Europeans. So this is
Exactly. There are always push factors. They were pushed
right.
out.
Right.
Yes.
So somebody had a push factor. America had the pull factor at the moment. And I keep telling, and then I really brought this up at the beginning of every we have these weird 8-week semesters, right? And I kind of have this conversation in the first few weeks where we really talk about let's talk about America, right? And they kind of love it. They're not really always happy about what they hear. But it does go into, hey, as an immigrant, you know that, the moment you open your mouth, they're kind of scanning you. Where are you from? Why are you speaking like that? Right? Putting you kind
Mhm.
of emotionally, psychologically in their own bracket, maybe in their own space
Mhm.
of survival. Right? And here you are as an immigrant. So then I bring up this great point that I kind of realized, especially right after we talked about today, Project 6019 came to Wright College, and I attempted to introduce it, and I was met with resistance. And I started talking about, listen, guys, I'm a historian. That's my ABC, right? Then the ESL endorsement is because I love immigrants. I'm an immigrant. And of
Mhm.
course, I got this job right before the very hostile to immigrants Trump administration, right? So I kind of felt I had a purpose, literally saving lives,
Mhm.
right? But the saving lives, I needed to remind them, hey guys, there's other lives here that we also
Mhm.
need to save, right? So that, African American men, or as my students call me, teacher, please call me Black American. I'm not from Africa. So Black
Okay.
Americans go running, like Mr. Ahmad Arbery, he's not going to get shot, right? Because he
Right.
looked at the house the wrong way, right?
Right.
So I bring up the point, you came to America. Welcome, right? I came in
Yeah.
1988. I've been here 33 years, right? This
Mhm.
is a melting pot. You came for a reason. If we had it good in our countries, we would not be here, right?
Exactly. Right.
We would be in our own countries. And you came to a place that is beautiful and painful at the same time,
Right.
right? We are based on two original sins that we don't even bring up, which we should, be part of our any curriculum. Uh, Basically, number one, the genocide of the Native people, Native American people,
Yeah.
and not only in this continent but also South America. But let's just say they can deal with that one because we have a plenty of our on our plate, right?
Right. Right.
But I would hope that if we make these changes, it would kind of reflect down the border based on the Mexican Native communities that are also being wiped out, the languages being
Right.
destroyed.
Mhm.
And then the second original sin, which is African slavery, right?
Yes. Is slavery is
And,
so
and,
yes.
and we haven't addressed it, right? So
Right.
I had a discussion with somebody based on the Evanston dispensary. MedMen is going to uh, the taxes from the Evanston dispensary will go into the city fund, and the city is the first United States that
Mhm.
allowed for reparations for Black citizens who were harmed in some way, and now they get reparations from this. And I said, 40 acres and a mule, it was promised but never given.
Right.
Now, even Spike Lee calls his company 40 Acres and a Mule.
Yes.
There's something there. Obviously, generations later, it was not forgotten
Right.
that promise was not kept, right? So I tell him African slavery, original two sins, we haven't really addressed. We're in the middle of being, oh my God, what's going on? Because the third prong, not to show anybody my middle finger, so it's this tripod, right? Of I call it the melting tripod, right? Of immigrants. And whether they came from the Mayflower, right? Because they were
Mhm.
refugees of religious
Right.
nature, right?
Mhm.
But they were still refugees. They were immigrants based on religious persecution. My family was anti-communist, so they were basically running away from being persecuted for not being communist. And America had open arms because we were openly anti-communist, right? So the third prong is like, oh my Lord, so surprised about the other two prongs, going, what do you mean? Well, this is a great country. And this was last year. I literally,
Mhm.
when this was happening regarding George Floyd, of course, today is the day 4 of the trial that I've been following, and it's been really raw. And I made my 8-year-old watch, and he said, "What is that?" And I said, "You're watching a police officer kill a citizen." because he's black. And telling an 8-year-old boy that, and he was like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, that's how I'm going to put it, right? I'm going to put it that way. So, me being on that side of being here 33 years, right?
Mhm.
Here I am now telling them, hello, welcome, you immigrants. I love you. I will help you in your fights to stay here. I will maybe coddle you a little bit more than American, professors, because
Mhm.
I know you. I was you. But I studied English since I was 3 years old because my parents knew that eventually we would go to America, right, at some point. And I moved here at 16 because it was hostile for us. So it was not going to, it was not happening. Our phone calls were being listened to. I mean, so when I bring that up, the third prong and then the
Mhm.
immigrants, originally I thought, like, guys, this is a beautiful thing. We're one of the very few countries on this planet that has people from 186 countries living here.
Yes. Mhm.
And then I tell my friends, the Serbs, because I'm Serbian American, former Yugoslavian, right?
Mhm.
I tell them, now we can't even get together in one country. One group of people can get our crap together and decide on
Mhm.
what we're going to do. Germany has the same problem. Every country that, let's say, has a majority population of one sort has that problem. Imagine this country, fully multinational, fully multiracial, mixed racial now, with the fact that 2050 white Americans will become minority 49%, looming,
Now,
right?
I have a question for you, Kata. Why is it difficult for immigrants to understand Black Lives Matter? Why is that such, I want to say, a stigma?
It's
Why
a
is that?
it's a stumbling block for them, and I have to tell you, I literally wrote things down because I said, people are not going to believe me. They're going to think I'm just a good writer. But as they say, you can't make this stuff up. Life is a much better writer than I could ever be, right?
Yeah.
So last year, when I told you about this, I had a Zoom class, um, and I put a question to students: who is Breonna Taylor? Who is George Floyd? Who is Laquan McDonald? Who is, I mean, Sandra? Like all of these names. There was about 10 to 15 names. I don't really remember.
Mhm.
And I was talking to somebody and I said, this is my class. There's immigrants. They're hungry. They come to class. This is a Thursday night, Friday night, 5:30 to 9:30
Mhm.
class. They work all day and then they come to class because they know they better learn English or nothing is happening, right? For them
Mhm.
in this country. So this is a class usually about 8 to 12 students on a Friday night shows up. And I was right at my hairdresser and I said, watch me clean up my class tonight. I bet you nobody's gonna show up in Zoom. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, I'm gonna make it about, do you know what's going on? I'm gonna ask the questions. Do you know who these people are? You are living here. We are like supposedly, this is our book. I want to show you. This is our material. Standout book. It has all these levels. If you see who makes it, I'm totally blind. I can't get you. National Geographic
Mhm.
Education. So City of Colleges paid National Geographic to make us a book. And so this is what we're teaching, very generic. There's a whole lot of here about your credit score, how to be a good bank, I mean, weird stuff. Maintain your apartment so that be a good renter. I mean, I was like, the bank pay for this? Really weird. So we don't really bring up a lot of like, these topics. We do because I also work on this thing called CNN 10, which is a
Mhm.
report from CNN, 3 stories for high school students. And
Mhm.
I've noticed the trend, when we're in class together, they can't really escape me because I started once I see the full class, right?
Mhm.
But when I announce it, tonight's topic, answer 10 questions, who is this person? And out of 12 students to 15 who could answer, I get two. And first, like one showed up in class, then one was late, and at the end, I had 3 students in Zoom. And one of them was this really nice gentleman from India. There was a Muslim minority Indian gentleman who
Mhm.
kept telling me how America is a great democracy and they cannot be changing history. And I'm thinking, my God, you're a person of color. Aren't you connecting the dots? How are you not connecting the dots? Why are you not connecting the dots? This can be you tomorrow. You are not safe in any way. By the way, my son is a blondie like me with blue eyes. He has a Gonzalez last name. And I even tell him, somebody asked you, you don't even bring that up. You bring Brassovan, my last name. I don't even want him thinking, oh, Latino. No, thank you. Even if you're blonde, I don't even want him thinking. That's Alfred I am as a mother because he has a Gonzalez last name. So I can
Mhm.
imagine other mothers, right? So this is like this epic stumbling block where they think I almost believe that they have to be a little bit racist to be American. I can't explain it any other way. Well, now I'm a good old American because I just, I'm why destroying property? Why are they doing that? They're not enjoying this country. Do you know how many years it took me to save money to come here? And now I had to pay a lawyer because I'm here undocumented. And you're like, I get it. You have your, hurt people hurt. I get it. You have pain. My family didn't come here for, fun. I
Right.
had literally PTSD from being an immigrant. And even that I was like in this phase of, because we first moved to Indiana, Crown Point, where my family was told it's safe. So no black people. So move there,
Mhm.
right? By
Mhm.
our community. Okay. So I moved there and I was shocked, like, where are all the black people? Where's America? Right. So like from that kind of thing of we're assimilating, we're doing it because
Mhm.
that's the good old American way,
Mhm.
and everybody kind of knows their way of that's your place, sit there, don't move a muscle, and we're all good. And I think when you think of it, I'm sure in their head, they're justifying, oh my God, how can they break that? My village doesn't even have a store. And these
Mhm.
people are burning something on Michigan Avenue, right? And immediately you're going, oh my God, I understand that. But please, for God's sakes, let's understand that this country had a history. There's a
Mhm.
context to this country.
Right.
Right? And this is what I always keep telling them when we're learning grammar and sentence structure. Context.
So, are you saying that they are resisting to understand?
I think a little bit, but it comes from a place of what do you mean America's not good? Do you know how bad it is in my country? Do you know what, like Ukrainian student? He might be from where the Russians have taken over. So for that student, he's like, what's with the South side? They don't get it. Right.
So they have
So,
preconceived
oh, yeah.
perceptions
That too.
of.
And then they still don't go and say, hey, can I find out on top of it?
Okay.
And then on top of it, we as adult educators at these huge organizations, and I was going to come up to my dean and say, what can we really do about this? Can we do like one class a semester? We talk about American
Mhm.
culture and history and how does us as immigrants fit in and ESL students, hello.
Mhm.
And then you throw into that the whole Latino community with
Mhm.
their colorism and racism and you're like,
Right.
oh dear
Right.
Lord, like. So the point is the problem is there and it's a beautiful problem because we're trying to solve it. And that's one thing that people ask me, oh, America's falling apart. Absolutely not. America as a democracy, that was our goal. Nobody said we had it back then. Nobody said we have it right now. And I keep telling everyone with every election cycle, you fight for that democracy. That is an organic being that you have to work for,
Mhm.
not promise, not at
No.
all.
Uh,
And
redefining what our democracy
absolutely.
is for
And
us as
and
individuals.
and that
Yes.
restitution or restitutive justice has to be part of the puzzle
Mhm.
because thank God that Biden had a the Minister of Interior is a Native American, senator.
Mhm.
Thank God that this new president included people, because that's the goal, right? I'm not saying it's going to work. Again,
Mhm.
even countries that have one or two groups of people can work together. We are an experiment in existence just by being here, right? And with a wobbly history, right?
Mhm.
And actually, it wasn't the Plymouth Rock or the Virginia. It was the Florida, my friend. The Spaniards were there first, and St.
Mhm.
Augustine in Florida was there in 1565. And the first free African baby was born in 1602. There was not even slavery in those Spanish Florida region. So, like, wow. I bet you a lot of Black people don't even know that. And I do because I'm a historian and I'm like, I want to know that, right? But I literally think we need some basic, like, the 10 commandments of America. Like, we are a country, a mix, a tribe, a tripod, right? And we have to integrate those three groups so that the Native people don't feel like we were eliminated and decimated and we will never recover. And, I know that some of them are getting the land, more and more land, but the original, the Trail of Tears, you can never replace the trauma, right?
Right.
Same thing for African Americans. The generational PTSD, same thing my people have from the Turks. We were under Turks for 500 years, right? So all these little issues that are jumping on us that we have to overcome to even be here, right? So when we talk about restitution, why such, like when I say that in the circles of my, Serbian American immigrants,
Mhm.
it's like shock, it's bewilderment. Like my taxes are going to pay. I wasn't a slave owner, but you are enjoying the fruit of those slaves,
Yeah.
however, which way it filters
So,
down.
Kata, I'm going to ask you, what efforts have to be taken in order for immigrants to have a more rich understanding of the parallels that take place within this country with race, social justice, and lack thereof?
Well, I think the another part of this puzzle now is this anti-Asian wave that's happening,
Mhm.
and I think that will, and we have, and it's hard because
Mhm.
like the last attack, wherever it was last couple attacks were Black men attacking Asian women. One was the guy who killed his mother or whatever and was released, and everybody's like, why was he released? Now he broke the pelvis of this lady. He literally stomped on her, and in New York, and the security guards of the building next door closed the door when he was doing that. Didn't come out to say stop with guns. No, close the door. So um, I think first of all, the Chauvin trial, it better be some real time for this murder, because if there isn't real time, I think the country will see a reckoning that we can't even imagine, and I don't want that. I think we
Do
don't. We
you think
deserve.
that you think that's, or do you think people are tired now
No, I don't think
of
people are tired at
think are
all.
tired of the
No,
protesting?
not at all. Actually, I have to tell you, as a white person, I have been demonstrating since 1989, right? So to see so many other white people come out for the first time last year was really different. And even in Uptown, we had people on Wilson Avenue between the lake and Broadway standing with signs, so there would be like 10 white people on one side and 10 white people on the other side, and just holding signs or say their name or George Floyd or, you know,
So
and
you feel that it is
it's
a
spontaneous.
sincere solidarity?
Yes,
Okay.
I think it's come out spontaneously, and I think it's come out in a whole new wave of people that didn't even know
Mhm.
they were activists, right? I think it's like abolitionism, like it grew, it like fermented, you know, and like you knew you were a bad Christian because how are you doing slavery and being a Christian at the same time, kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's what's happening, to be honest. I think that unfortunately for the immigrants, again, I said we really need to, at least if we're going to have these free classes and all of this, we need to have literally like a national campaign, you know?
So, do you feel that some of America, some of white America, have now broadened their understanding of
Absolutely.
justice through the lens of African
Well,
Americans and
I
people of
think it's
color?
the thing now is we now have the videos. You can't stop it, right? Because
Right.
before the lynching, maybe you didn't see it, maybe it wasn't here, you heard about it, but now, no, no, no. Now it's here, right? And it's in front of you, and it's on your TV, and you can't tell me if you have any, compassion as a human being, you're going to be, oh well, what was he doing there? Well, I'm sorry. Laquan McDonald did not need to get shot 16 times. I'm sorry. You can shoot him once in his leg, and that's it if you were that threatened. So just bringing up these conversations. I mean, I literally had to, I have to say again, my Latino
Mhm.
community, I love them dearly, but unfortunately, in my Serbian community, we're part of the problem. And I was at the funeral of the Cuban grandma. That's my family's grandma, and they were glorifying Trump and everything in Miami. And I felt so horrified that I stood up and I said, Black Lives Matter with a smile in front of 40 Cubans. And I left the room and went out the door. And that was after one of the white girlfriends of the Cuban brother told me, well, no, no, not really. All lives matter, right? And I said, well, no, not really. Because until Black Lives Matter, it's not all lives matter, right? Until Asian lives matter, we can't have all lives matter because all includes those
Mhm.
groups. So how can you be so, what are you saying? Like, hello? Like, doesn't even make sense. So I think that, I'm not saying I'm some badass or anything, but I think when I bring this up in class, which I did last week, actually 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion on this, and they were supposed to write a paragraph because Breonna Taylor's family got 12 million, right? And then George Floyd's family got $27 million. I mean, what are you telling me that this what you're going to give me 12 million and now my daughter is miraculously what back? Right.
Mhm.
So like it, just talking about it, and I like showed her the sign saying, again, I was trying to say, let's be open to learning, right?
Mhm.
As you have your trauma, communities in this country have their own trauma, right?
Mhm.
And the student wrote All Lives Matter in the chat on Zoom. Eastern European students. So it's a work in progress, my point is, but we have no national curriculum that mentions it. Actually, a lot of states have taken back, Texas curriculum doesn't even mention it's slavery. It mentions it's something like completely ridiculous. We have no welcome to United States. We could possibly put it in there when you're applying for your papers that you have to pass part of that kind of history with your constitution test. But what
Okay.
about all the undocumented people who live here for 20 years,
Right.
right? So maybe we need national commercials, like literally, like
Mhm.
some funny, interesting marketing campaign that's going to
Mhm.
attack cultural stigma and like fix it, and literally during showtime, you have your campaign and it gets you thinking. Like it's going to have to be that way,
Now, do
right?
you think that this campaign should be a push toward the immigrant communities?
I think at this point, because it's like backfiring on every level because the Black community is suffering now, the Asian community is suffering, and the Asian community that's suffering is not all immigrants, right? Because some of them have been here, so it's like wait, 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 wait. So that's why I think it should be towards the whole American experience,
Mhm.
right? Something where like You know, you include a grandpa from the South saying something, yeah, maybe you were a coal worker, but now we're going to do something green. We're going to include these people in this green project. We're going to do like Roosevelt did with Work For. He saved us out of depression. We can do the same thing and do a green revolution in the process. You know, Germany's 70% solar. They barely have sunshine. The country's constantly in the clouds. I'm like, what? How? And we are where? Right?
Mhm.
So it should be, I mean, I'm not saying this current president can do it all in 1 4 terms, none of that. But it literally needs to be a national movement. I'm not calling it a national reconciliation, but like a moment of truth. You know, like, hello.
You, Kata, do you feel that the immigrant community refuses to identify with the racial disparities within
Absolutely.
our system?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, unless they're themselves you know, person of color, it's completely missed on them. Because and that's another thing that I heard from my language arts students, like at Kennedy King, you know, who are like,
Mhm.
how are all these immigrants opening all these stores, you know, in our neighborhood at Kennedy
Mhm.
King? Right. And I'm
Mhm.
like, well, if you understood the immigrant culture, you would know. And I would bring a guy to the classroom. I had this one guy who was a student, Mexican, non-documented.
Mhm.
He traveled like 2 hours a day just to get to their culinary program. So I was like, this is your competition. This immigrant probably came in, like literally walked through the border
Mhm.
and swam through the river. And he now
Mhm.
will take the train for 2.5 hours a day. And he will work 14-hour days. And
Mhm.
that's your competition right now in America. So there
Being that
shouldn't be,
they don't have that sense of entitlement.
no, not even that, but they don't have that drive because they didn't walk from, you know, and they have a different kind of existential problem, right? That's
Mhm.
multi-generational. Hey, my family was not allowed during slavery to own property, so we couldn't accumulate, right? So now we're finally making multi-generational, you know, wealth.
Right. Mhm.
You know, so when you look at that, why don't you have any kind of compassion for your fellow poor man? Well, you don't, because the poor man is maybe different color or different something or different country, right? So even on top of that, and that's what we talked about at some point, all the immigrants have their own
Mhm.
intracontinental let's call them conflicts, opinions, stereotypes. Like for me, I know, oh, okay, we're the butchers of Europe. You know, we're like one of the lowest on the scale. We're one of the poorest countries currently, even though we were number 7 in the world in terms of GDP, and we're now one of the poorest in Europe. We are
Mhm.
from 11 went to 7 million. Everybody's moving away. That's how you know the country's not moving anywhere. The country's falling apart. People are moving. So when you see that, that's an indicator, right? Same thing, Venezuela falling apart. People are literally walking to America, right? But the point is, we have this specific experiment that is very fragile, right? And we're not working on it. We're not maintaining it. We're not, like cultivating our civic duties. We're not creating like that new generation of uh, of leaders. You know, the Black movement barely has leaders now. With BLM, they do, and you know they were nominated for the the Nobel Peace Prize, and finally some recognition. But like, I mean, something like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, somebody that just sticks out so much that you cannot say no, right? And other groups neither. Nobody really has anybody that can fight for their rights. So it obviously has to be in terms of what I call voting blocks. This is why I keep telling people why voting is so important. Your power, you lose it. Even that one vote is part of a voting block. As a voting block, you have power, right? So this is where we need to really work on that. And literally, I don't know how to include the immigrants except commercials on Univision and Telemundo and all of that in Spanish, and the Korean station. and all the stations. We're all kumbaya holding hands, like, like, I'm not kidding. It's gonna have to get to basics and literally like, you know, will you be my neighbor kind of thing? Like, hey, don't
Now,
forget.
Kata, I have another question for you. Okay, you yourself, you're an immigrant. How, what steps did your parents take, or what steps did you take yourself to understand the Black experience,
I come
where
up
you're not resistant to the movement? You're an
my
ally.
Yeah, my story is very weird and different from a normal Serbian story because my grandfather finished law and political science at the Sorbonne in Paris. So he was there when Lindbergh landed over there and saw and had a piece of the plane and said, America, that country, we're gonna go there, right? So when I was born, I was already like being groomed that one day we're gonna move there, right? My father listened to jazz. I grew up with Mahalia Jackson and like stuff that was not really normal for Serbian family, even within Yugoslavia. Okay. We were just different. And with the family being in the United States, my grandparents moved here in 63. We had visited all the time. All of that has happened. So I then was very exposed. And, I don't know if you were in the class with uh, somebody asked about like the music that influenced us in high school. And I said, for some reason in my country, if you were hip, you were like into soul music. And, if whatever it is, it's got to be funky. That was like the thing. And I'm going, what the hell did we know about funk at 17 in Yugoslavia? We were not Black, but we were all like, whatever the counterculture in America was, that was cool, right? So I had that background. Now, the moment we moved here in 88, my father, poor father, whose English was kind of Tarzanish, decided that he better assimilate and start all of a sudden being a racist so he can fit in. So, and I was like, how dare you? Like, how dare you? You know the music you listen to. You know that, they used to lock you up because you wore jeans. He would get jeans from America and he would get locked up because there was too American looking. The communists didn't like it, right? And I mean, it was that bad. And I was like, Crown Point, Indiana made this out of you, and we started clashing, right? And I did have my own experience where I realized, hey, for whatever reason, I'm a blonde, white young lady. The Black people are not responsive to me, right? So remember, I told you I had a friend, not a friend, an acquaintance who's like fresh off the boat. And last year, during all the BLM protest, he said, I told you, Orthodox Serbian Rastafarian. And I said, wonderful. You listen to a little bit of Bob Marley and now you're like this with Black people. I get it. And he was really offended that Black people wouldn't be friends with him. And I said, do you understand the trauma? Do you really? Like, and now just because you came 2 years ago, you don't know nothing. You're supposed to be falling into their loving arms. It does not work like that. And that did happen to me myself, but as a historian, I took it completely differently, right? And I said, I kind of said, wow, how sad that we can't really get closer, but I'm going to give him space because I understand the trauma. I'm not going to push myself on somebody who's not ready, to be like friends with me because Serbs that were allowed and da 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 da. And, we're not just your normal Americans, right? So there's like a learning curve with Serbs also. But I did have some really good friends, and to me, it just made sense, like, excuse me, if the Germans can give the Jews restitution, right? And even last year during Corona, this is historical standpoint, believe it or not, I was crossing myself and I'm not a believer. Last year during Corona, the German government paid 2,000 euros to the remainder of that Holocaust survivor group that they give restitutions to just boost them up during Corona. So obviously, they're still accepting that those people were so traumatized in 1941 to 45, they cannot function 70 years later. They still need help. We restituted the Japanese internment camps, right? We said 40 acres and a mule. I'm not saying everybody should be getting $50,000 slots of money, but I'm saying, hey, we're smart people. Let's sit down some group, a think tank, and let's figure out restitution. And for some reason, the immigrants get very upset when I mention that. And especially because, well, I just got here. So I was not a slave owner. And I don't have white privilege. I'm an immigrant. Yes, but are you getting shot when you leave your house? Because you're a white guy, you're not a black guy, so you don't have to worry about that part at least. Maybe you have to worry about the job and all the other things. Yes, maybe you don't speak the language, so that's a factor that you push in there on your, like what they
So do
call
you
it.
think it's a lack of understanding or a lack of empathy or
First of
both?
all, I think it's both, and I think first of all, they don't even know about the trauma. They don't really know what happened. First of all. Now, the part that bugs me is, hey, I managed to find out, but I'm a historian. For me, that's like I'm a sponge. I love that, right?
Mhm.
To me, learning history of this country or my country, that's like a part-time job. Like, like that's who I am. So I understand that some people, they don't care about that. They came here to make money and blah, blah, blah. But I get it. But do not dismiss the trauma of somebody else.
Mhm.
Please, while you're here to make it in America, do understand that the American dream of others was maybe ruined by 400 years of slavery. And now they're starting from that threshold,
Mhm.
and the success is moved, right? Because you didn't have a generational wealth for millennia, millennia, right? And so now you're starting fresh. So it's a combination of factors, and unfortunately, uh, you know, the American culture that kind of negates Black Lives Matter and negates that there's a problem, and like, what are they talking about? Like, that's what they cling on to. So then they're like, what are they talking about? Look at America. Do you know how pretty it is here? We have nothing in my country. Why are they destroying downtown? Oh my God.
Mhm.
And then they start telling me about Black people, and I'm going, oh my Lord, you're missing the point completely.
Mhm.
Like, completely. You haven't even like touched upon it.
Mhm.
They don't get it. They don't get it. They see it from a different angle. And we can talk about this some other time because, again, I'm going to have to figure out on a long term scale, on a national level. Like, I'm only
Mhm.
part of City College of Chicago. I can maybe implement a class or professional development for faculty. Can I make the faculty teach this to students? No.
Mhm.
Will the students accept the facts that this is a trifecta conundrum? We are part of the problem,
Mhm.
because we came into a land that already had two other herd populations, and we added our herd population to it, and it's a mess.
Now,
No.
do you think that immigrants will ever accept the systematic racial oppression experienced by Black people and people of color?
That's a hard one because, especially for European immigrants, they don't have the racial structures. So for them, it's a country has one group of people, one race, that's it. So they don't really get that. They're like, what are you talking about? You go to the post office, who's carrying what up? You're like, my God, everywhere. It's everywhere. Even if you think that it's not there, the fact that you're not seeing it means that it's there, right? The mere fact that you're not realizing it means it's right. So this is what I'm saying. It needs to be an overwhelming campaign that goes on for decades.
Yeah,
That
because these
exposes
are a
us.
lot of Kata, these are a lot of underlying issues that's hidden within racism.
Yeah. And it's not and it's like it's so weird. I don't know if you remember the Spike Lee Do the Right Thing, that one scene when they all bad mouthy, and you Korean and you Black and you Puerto Rican, and
Mhm.
I'm going, yes, That's the problem. That's the melting tripod. But
Mhm.
we gotta get over it. That's
Mhm.
America, right? Love it.
Yes.
It's not pretty sometimes. Yeah, right.
Mm.
Last year it wasn't pretty. Corona wasn't pretty. But guess what? When you all got $1,400, per person, you might have felt a little bit better because in your banana republic you would have gotten $30. That's what
Mhm.
they got in my country, $30. So you know it puts it into perspective, and I think that um, the combination of election of I call him Trump, I'm calling Trump, and I've never used president and his last name together ever while he was in office, and I will never do it. I think it catalyzed all of this. So you know what? Good
Mhm.
job, a-hole. Thank you. You know what? Because it's coming all up. And we're gonna, the day of reckoning is coming. We're gonna have to deal with it one way or another. And I think, the fact that now that Biden's here, the country just feels more peaceful. Everybody's a little bit more like, I'm not saying he's gonna solve everything or none of that. It's just a little bit less crazy. Just kind of tone down the crazy. We already have a pandemic. Let's just figure that out. We have other problems. We cannot be adding all the crazy, shenanigans of a president to this already very wobbly American experience. We need
Mhm.
somebody, and obviously electing a black president was nothing, right? Because if you remember Mitch McConnell, when they mentioned reparations, said, well, we had a black president. Oh, okay, Mitch. So that solved all of it. 400 years, all of the other stuff, that's all gone. So it's like, again, not sure it will ever happen. I can be a dreamer, educator, but it would entail something along the line of what Germany did to the Jewish population. And it was a very serious. And even though I read somewhere that during the Nuremberg trial, only what 7 or 9 Nazis were actually like executed. Like this was not, a lot of them really got away. But Germany did in the end do the right thing and pay the reparations.
Do you think that's going to happen here in America?
I would
From
like to
your
see
from
it.
your lens of being a historian and
Yes,
an
because
immigrant?
but Evanston took the first stand, and I really commend him for that. And you should have seen. It was in this medical cannabis group because the money from that one dispensary is funding this reparation fund, right? And they were like, what do you think? And of course, all the people of color were super happy. And some white people were so offended. And I was like, what in the world are you offended about? And I said, same thing, 40 acres and a mule, my friend, promise never given. Let's do it. Let's calculate I mean, I would really love to really, Finding Your Roots, Professor Gates on PBS, when he goes back and finds out who the slave owner was. Hey,
Mhm.
honey, this is the bill for the slaves your family owned. This is how many you had. We DNA traced them back to your family. I mean, I would really kind of take it far. They wouldn't let me take it that far. But I mean, if you wanted to, you could go into some real rich families, companies that made money and say, hey, reparations, pay it. You didn't do it for 300 years, 400 years. Do it now. Be on the right side of things. You
Mhm.
know, you don't have to wait for us to tell you that you own slaves. You do it. Because I heard that supposedly Ben Affleck, when he was on the show, when he found out that his family owned slaves, he wanted it taken out. He didn't want it to be public knowledge. So you know what? Own it up. He should have made a $10 million donation right there when he found out. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
own up to it. Like, again, maybe I'm just delusional because I've only been here 33 years, But at this point, I've been here longer. 2/3 of my life I spent in America, 1/3 in Yugoslavia. But my point is, I feel more American than any American that was born here. And that is the beauty of being an immigrant, because you can only do that here. And I remember when my uncle lived in Germany, he died, God bless him. He said, there's a term, because Germany had an influx of Turkish immigration. They invited all these Turkish people over. in the 70s. But they never integrated them. So you have like this really unhealthy like situation in Germany. And again, with the Muslims, I mean, it's a Muslim population, unhealthy. And my uncle would always say they have the specific term, what's it called? Ausländer, which means the stranger. And you're forever the stranger in Germany. You're never from here, right? So, and you never feel that in America. Like, I really don't ever feel that because I march in this country, I fight for this country, I teach for this country, I pay taxes in this country, darn it. So I feel so American, especially after resisting for 4 years, during the last 4 years, that I feel like, what a beautiful thing. Really, nobody has this beautiful, very fragile
Mhm.
democratic experiment. Again, it was never pretty. It was never pretty, but we're working on it, right?
So, Kata, this has been an enjoyable conversation with you, and I'm
Yeah.
definitely wanting you back because I want you. Um, we're gonna collaborate because I want to understand the dynamics of Yugoslavia, Russia, Ukraine, and what has taken place with the history of the culture and the country.
Right.
And I definitely want to bring you back on Safe Space so that we can have that conversation.
It was my
This,
pleasure.
oh, it has been a pleasure. I love you. Oh my gosh.
You too, dear.
I definitely have to bring you back because I love the way you put your voice to your experience. And I appreciate the fact that the lens that you have chosen to experience immigration, experience America. I do respect you for your voice. Um, and I want to thank everyone for joining Safe Space this week. Please join me every week, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, for our conversation. And as always, take a moment and shine your light in the dark. Have a good evening and be safe.
Thank you.